Hello. I hope you can hear me. If you are in the chat, can you please let me know that you can hear me? I want to make sure this thing's working. Hello. Can you hear me? Anybody? I can see there's people in the chat. Great to see you. Like, don't worry, darling. I knew you would. Hello. Eddie and Brandon, nice to see you. Sounds good. Good. All right. Excellent. Yeah. I liked Don't Worry, Darling. I absolutely love it. We were chatting about it in Discord yesterday, and we had a really, really good chat just about a few things in that film, and it just keeps on giving. Hello, Noel and Owen. So that film just gives, there's so much in it. It's endless. And I mean, the videos that I'm making on this movie, I don't even think that I could stop talking about it if I talked about it for weeks on end. So there's probably a lot more I could say than what I put in these videos, but at least it gets the discussion going and it gets people seeing it this way and seeing more in it. So, and then you'll be able to take that and put it onto other movies and television shows and your reality and be able to see a lot more in your own reality. Jacqueline, welcome. Sending positive energies from Newcastle on time. Nice to see you here. Thank you very much. So, yeah, that film is just super powerful. There's so much in it. And I'm really looking forward to getting this series out because it's just so rich. I learn something every video, even after I've written the script of what I'm going to say. I still learn when I break it down into individual videos. I still learn something even more the deeper I go. It's so powerful. What did you think of the film, Brandon? Did anybody else see Don't Worry, Darling? Dune, if you haven't seen it, it's my new obsession. I'm not sure. I think I might have seen this film. That came out some time ago, right? Is that a remake movie? I seem to think that it has Charlize Theron in it. So yeah, I'd like to know what you thought of Don't Worry, Darling, or anything similar. Some of the people in the Discord were talking about a couple other films, like a little indie film. I forget the name of it now, but it's about kind of similar subject, and kind of triggered about that subject from Don't Worry, Darling. Lilfie, good to see you. Hello. Yeah, you're the one who recommended it, so you love it, of course. Well, it was interesting because some of the comments, and unfortunately, there's not very many comments on my videos just yet. And I don't know whether that's because people haven't seen the movie yet, or, trying to watch the video without seeing the movie. Maybe it's not registering or clicking. I don't know. Quirky Chick, you loved the movie. Great. Nice to see you, by the way. And yeah, it was very interesting, though, how some people absolutely love it. I find it's one of the most powerful films that shows the truth. I find it even more powerful than Westworld. And I absolutely love Westworld. There's so much truth in that, too. But I found that there's just so much more in this film. It truly is perfect in a lot of ways. And anyhow, there are some people who were saying that they found it kind of draining and it triggered something in them. And so I find that very interesting. And I would really love to understand, if you understand. I mean, maybe you don't, you just have the feeling, but you don't quite know why, but why that feeling came about, and like why you think that is. Because oh, okay, I'm confusing it with something else then. Remake came out 2 years ago. Rebecca Ferguson is the main lady. It's loaded with symbolism and has a huge fan base. Okay, I'll add it to my list, my ever-growing list. Yeah, quirky chick, I agree 100%. Yeah, I personally find, when I was watching Don't Worry Darling, I felt close to home, because I don't see the surface anymore. Well, like I could do, but I don't really look at it. I look past it. So what a lot of mainstreamers see as this superficial layer of a weird film that doesn't make sense, I see what I present to you in my videos is what I see. And that is shining through so strongly that it feels like home to me. And when I was working on the decode, I'd watched the movie 3 times, and I was working on my notes. And when I finished my notes, I was like, okay, now what do I do? I just felt so so sad to have finished. I wanted to just dive back in, which is interesting. It's the same feeling I had with Westworld. I feel so connected in that zone that when I come out of it, I was like, okay, now what? Westworld was disturbing for me, but Don't Worry Darling felt so familiar. Yeah, when I first watched Westworld, I found it disturbing too, and then I went and I couldn't watch it, and I went back and I watched it again because I had more knowledge, and so the knowledge and the wisdom of it shone through to me, just like Don't Worry Darling, and that was the story that I was seeing. So all of the violence and everything kind of just went away. But yeah, that was what I saw. And I've seen Westworld now twice, and I wrote detailed notes of everything on every episode, which I'm going to eventually make a decode on. But yeah, I can watch it over and over. Same with Don't Worry Darling, I can watch over and over. So yeah, it's has anybody found Don't Worry Darling or Westworld like very disturbing or unsettling or draining or triggering or anything? I would really like to know if there's anybody who felt that way. I mean, Quirky Chick, you said that Westworld was disturbing, so perhaps you wouldn't mind sharing why. Yeah, it's coming. A decode on Westworld is coming. But first, Don't Worry Darling has to get finished, and Johnny Depp has to get finished. So it's a little bit away down the road. It takes a long time to get this stuff out. Which initially I thought I was just going to do a single video on Don't Worry Darling, but it was so heavy. And I was like, nobody's going to be able to digest this in one video. It's just too much. Plus, making it would have been too much for me. It's so overpowering. And, when I look back on something like my Parallel Universes video, that's like an hour and a half long, but it's not nearly as heavy as Don't Worry Darling, or as intense. But that video took me a long time to make, and it was fun to make, but it takes a long time. And so I think it's better if they're in digestible pieces. So I'll probably do that again with Johnny Depp and Westworld. There's so much in Westworld as well, but again, that's not as rich or as deep as Don't Worry Darling. So yeah, I'll break that down into pieces, obviously, because I can't do that in one go. You mean season 4 of Westworld? Yeah. Dolores realized her pearl is the center of that reality rang true. Yeah. It's interesting. A lot of people didn't realize that Dolores, it's all Dolores. It's her world. Which is, heartbreaking at the same time. Like the moment where she goes into the story room and realizes that she's the storyteller is like heartbreaking to watch. And then it's empowering because, we go through the same sort of experience when we realize the truth of this place, and it's like, oh crap. and then afterwards it's empowering, and it can go either way. It can be a destructive thing, or it can be a beautiful thing. So how's everybody doing? What's going on in your world? Maybe because for the first time I could see the falseness in our reality. Oh, okay. So was this recent then? Was this okay? So when you say falseness, do you mean so you watched it when you had awareness of what this place was to some extent, but didn't realize how fake it was? And so I don't want to put words in your mouth, but trying to understand what you mean by falseness. Is that to do with the illusion of this world, or is that to do with how contrived it is? Like, what level of falseness are we talking here? Illusion. Okay. Yeah. So it kind of triggered you. So yeah, I mean, you can get to the point where you realize the illusion, and then it's heartbreaking, and it hits you hard, and it's hard to take. And then perhaps at one point you might be able to go back and watch it with a different perspective and see the beauty in it. Ironically, that's what Dolores would say, or coincidentally rather, because at first, like I was saying, at first when you realize the illusion, it's shocking and heartbreaking. And then when you get past that, you can see how perfect it is and how beautiful it is and poetic. And so I think it's easier to take once you're through that part, through that illusion part, because you have to shatter the illusion first before you can see how beautiful it is. And this is partly what's so hard about getting over the duality battle, and getting over the idea of us versus them, and that there's somebody out there trying to kill you, and the fear trap, as I call it. So trying to get past that level, that's part of it, because you're still holding on to the physical, you're still holding on to the story, and in denial of what this place really is, because it's a protection. your ego is protecting you from seeing the truth, because if you take too much in it too fast, it could kill you. Like, it's shocking how, like, some of these truths, they break your heart, they shatter you inside, and you have to rebuild yourself every time. So if you take in too much too soon, you can't handle it. And that's why ego is there to protect you. It's why you are only shown what you are prepared to receive and what you're ready to receive. So you might get triggered by certain truths and be defensive about it, or angry about it, or attack people for it, or you just get triggered and don't want to hear it. So it's an interesting experience to go through that, because you feel like, well, hang on a second. I went through this. I listened to this before and I rejected it and couldn't tolerate it. It was, not palatable to me. And now I'm listening to it and it resonates and it makes sense to me. It's kind of a strange experience to go through that. Can see the power we actually have over our reality. Yeah. That's a tough one too. And taking responsibility for it as well, in the sort of ironic double-edged sword situation that it is, that you have to take responsibility for your thoughts and everything, because that's what creates reality or your experience. But at the same time, it's already scripted. So how do you take responsibility for something that you didn't write, and yet you did write it? So, you know what I mean? It's just something you kind of have to accept. Hi, Lone Ranger. It's good to see you. Brandon, unfortunately, if it was all sunshine and rainbows, we wouldn't learn anything. Exactly. We wouldn't. I mean, I'd like to think we would, if it was all sunshine and rainbows and we didn't have the deception, we didn't have the ego lying to us all the time. But, this is kind of what this experience is. It's like, it's tough, because right now I'm in the stage where I'm seeing the duality and everything, and it's really hard to talk because I see both sides at the same time, and trying to express that is frustrating. And is anybody else in that stage where you're seeing the duality and everything, and you're like, well, on the one hand, it's like this, but it's also like this. It's kind of frustrating. It's frustrating because you can't really get ideas out fluidly or clearly. But anyway, my point is that if we lived in a paradise, or it's crazy making quirky chick. It sure is. So if you were in a paradise where everything was sunshine and rainbows, and we didn't have, like, I don't think we need the conflict to the extreme that we have. We have the conflict in this level because we're so obtuse, we're so asleep. And so by contrast, the more asleep we are, the louder the other side has to get to wake up the sleeper. But if you are, even in your own experience, as you awaken, the contrast lessens, and it lessens as well because you are aware of this duality battle and you don't need it anymore. You can see it as contrast without it being conflict, and it presents an opposing side, like the duality. So you see both sides at the same time, which is helpful and illuminating and informative. You learn something from it, but it doesn't need to inflict the suffering and the pain and the trauma that it did before when you needed someone to slap you in the face and say, snap out of it. So yeah, it's not good or bad. It just is. So it's your choice if you want to interpret it as super awful and painful and traumatic, and you want to experience that, you're kind of choosing that at that point, where because you're not unconscious, you're aware of it. So it becomes contrast, not conflict. So it can be, I think it can be all sunshine and rainbows in a sense, where it's just something that happens, because ultimately it's about how we interpret things or how we view things. Quirky chick, your interpretations become your reality. Exactly, yeah. This kind of reminds me of a comment I saw. I won't relay the whole comment, but it was about forgiveness. And a lot of people have a hard time with forgiveness when bad things happen. And I've had this sort of pushback from people who've been through really bad experiences before. So it's a fairly common perspective. It's this perspective that if you forgive someone who did something really bad to you, that you're giving them permission to do it again, which is not accurate. The way I see this now is like forgiveness is more about you and yourself. You're releasing yourself from that other person and their hold on you. And if you hold a grudge, you're holding on to an attachment to that other person. And this comment had some interesting perspectives in it, which is why I mention it, because this person was reluctant to forgive because the other person had not shown any remorse, had not changed, and this person had ruined this person's life, allegedly. So, I mean, I don't know all the details, but they did get into some details. Yes, that's horrible. It is horrible. But what I found interesting about this particular situation was the statement that this person didn't want to forgive until the other person was willing to show remorse or change. It's like, okay, well, why are you hinging your ability to move forward in your own life by forgiving this person? You're holding on to this pain and suffering and hinging it on them and their ability to change, which may never happen. So you tied yourself to this other person and given them the power to control your life, because you're not going to do anything about your pain and suffering until they change, which is, if you can see it that way, you should be able to release yourself from it, because it's sheer lunacy, really, when you put it in that context, when you are able to see it that way, because basically you are hinging your life and your decisions on and giving them over to someone else. And this can happen in many different forms. So why wouldn't you want to sever that and free yourself from that? So, I mean, there's a lot of these sorts of conversations that we have with ourselves when we're projecting onto somebody else and blaming somebody else for things that happened in our lives and saying, I can't do this because this person did such and such. And a lot of times we're not conscious of it. We're not aware of it. We don't know that this is what we're doing. It's kind of ingrained in society that that's what it's supposed to be and that's how it works. And so Lone Ranger is having audio issues. Anybody else having audio issues? So yeah, I just found it very interesting that this perspective was what was holding this person back from moving forward. And you could sadly feel a lot of the pain this person was carrying, and was reluctant to release themselves from it because of the anger of what the other person had done to them. And they end up being in this bond with this other person that they can't free themselves from, which is horrible. Anyway, I just thought that was really fascinating. Yeah, it is a trauma bond in some sense, quirky chick. Yeah, I agree. The trauma bond is a weird thing. It's I I think a trauma bond could possibly be like the polar opposite of love. It's a strong attachment, and it's so physically painful, but you feel so much, and you're kind of attached to that other person in a very weird way. Yeah, it's a very strange situation. Anyhow, how are you doing? What's going on? What do you want to talk about? What is happening with you in your ascension process? Um, like I said, like synchronicities, anything going on with you for synchronicities or anything? Like I was just saying, I'm going through this period where I see the duality in everything. And so yeah, on a lighter note, so that's a little bit weird. And it's frustrating too, because you can't really get past seeing the duality in everything, where it's like, okay, well, I could go and indulge in the physical, but then what's the point? You kind of cancel it, the whole thought out into nothing. And I find that incredibly frustrating. And it's kind of a um, I don't know, I guess a stuck place, or um, like a frustrating place, I think, where it's not progressive, not moving forward. Maybe a little bit of chaos. I don't know. Ignorance really is bliss. Do you mean ignorance of the truth, or just ignorance in general? I mean, I used to think that too when I was, hello, Ixie. When I was younger, I used to kind of think, well, what would it be like to be really ignorant? Or would it make me happy if I didn't think as much? Would it make me happy if I was, um, you know, just focused on superficial things, and not so intellectual, just sort of going about life like it didn't matter? There's not really any point in thinking that, because I can't be other than what I am. So, but I guess it's just a thought experiment. It's because now you know and can't unsee it, so you have to process it. Yeah. Yeah. Now you know, you can't. The thing with the truth is you can't unsee it. That's for sure. It shows itself when you're ready to see it. And it's funny too, because a lot of times we worry about showing the truth to people. Sometimes I worry about that. Like, there's certain things I come across that I want to make a video about, and I'm thinking, well, should I talk about that? Because Are people ready to hear that? Is that something that is going to be digestible? And then I put it out, and everybody's like, "Oh yeah." So I'm like, "Okay, what was I worried about?" Dixie, don't do that. Hey, no. Stop it. Thank you. Yeah, I was like, what was I worried about? Because quite a few people get it. So, sometimes you come across something that's like, like the Johnny Depp stuff. It's like, well, this is kind of a little bit out there. It's a little bit weird. Or the TV watching you stuff, where it's like, this is a little out there. But then I put it out, and people are like, oh yeah, this happened to me. So I'm like, okay, all right. There's always going to be at least some people who get it, some people who've experienced it, and then there's also going to be a few people who are like, what the heck are you talking about? What is this stuff? But I think you have to be in this territory. Oh, thanks, quirky chick. We love you. Keep it coming. It's like you have to be a little bit bold and brave to put out all of that weird stuff, which is, a lot of it is stuff that people are afraid to talk about because it is a little out there. However, I personally, when I find somebody talking about this stuff, hold on. Ixie, come on. You need some food? Come here. Come on. Come on. There you go. Yeah. Just some food for you, okay? Sorry about that. Cat was hungry. Yeah, personally, when I find people who talk about the more out there stuff, I find it reassuring and interesting and fascinating, and I want to hear it. So even the stuff that I think is possibly not true, sometimes these stories are not real. People make them up. But I like to listen to these Matrix. There's there's certain series of videos where people write their Matrix glitch stories or ghost stories, paranormal stories of just strange happenings, things that have happened to them that are unusual. And I like listening to those sorts of stories. They're not always what people think they are, but I just find it comforting to hear other people finally talk openly about this stuff. A lot of these Matrix glitch stories seem to have to do with people misplacing things, and they think it's a glitch. So I'm like, no, you just misplaced something. But like the other stuff, there's some other stories that are really quite interesting, and then some are clearly made up. Like there's one story that I heard, which was a Matrix glitch story, that this guy was telling a story about how he drove to a desert town, went into a restaurant, and everybody was dressed like they were in the past, and he ordered Coke or something, and and then he said he paid and he left. I'm like, okay, so his story was trying to say that he had gone back in time. However, he paid with modern money, and there were references to modern things that they wouldn't have had in the past. So it was kind of like, well, kind of missed some details there. But anyway, yeah, so I really enjoy listening to those sorts of stories. It's nice to hear. Anybody have any unusual experiences that have happened to them lately? Any synchronicities? And I'm trying to think if I had any synchronicities that, well, at the moment I'm seeing keyholes everywhere. We were talking about it in Discord. And in Don't Worry Darling, the cul-de-sac that they live in kind of looks like a keyhole. And the Lord of the Rings on the top of the mountain, the spiral mountain, which was also in Don't Worry Darling, there's a shape of what looks like a keyhole. And then one of the videos in my YouTube feed today looked like a keyhole. What was a keyhole? But anyway, so that's one that's showing up for me. Anybody else have any synchronicities showing up for them? What else? Just been having some kind of random weird synchronicities, not really anything. It's like people mentioning TrueLove every now and then on television. It's kind of weird. Nobody has any synchronicities? Okay. Anybody seen the heard of the school shooting that happened this week? I was going to do a decode on it, and I might do a short one because every time I notice the clock is 2:34. Okay. Yeah, I have when I look at the clock, it's either like 11:11 or 9:11 or 3:11 or 3:33 or, yeah, the clock is very synchronized. So yeah, the shooting that happened this week, was kind of strange. Like, they're really pushing it. They're really making a big deal out of it, but there isn't too much in it in terms of decodes. I feel a massive perturbation and anxiety about putting my voice and face out there. Typing is so much easier. Ayahuasca, skydiving, crypto trading. I'm comfortable with risk, but this Lone Ranger. Okay, so why is that? What is that connected to? Is it because you're in terms of truth? You mean you don't want to talk about the truth, like truth related subjects on a public platform, showing your face or your voice? Is that what you mean? Yeah, well, here's the thing with like the risk of skydiving and crypto trading and that sort of thing, versus putting your face out there and talking like this. This is more of an internal and psychological fear that you're confronting, whereas skydiving and crypto trading are external things. Ayahuasca is, on the other hand, a bit of an internal thing. And but it's more like skydiving. I couldn't do skydiving, no thanks, but but it's more to do with like the external stuff than putting yourself out there and talking in public, and that's a common thing for a lot of people. Talking in public on a public platform is very hard for people. I mean, right now, I get on here sometimes and I'm like, what am I going to talk about? Is it going to go okay? And is anybody going to have anything that they're going to want to talk about? Is there going to be any comments? Is there going to, like all of that stuff runs through my head, but I just do it anyway. And I'm here for you to just talk, just to have someone to talk to. And, I find that's beneficial for a lot of people. A lot of times we want that feeling of connection, that there's somebody out there who knows what I know and feels what I feel and has been through what I've been through. And just hearing somebody say the words sometimes, so a lot of you say to me, it's just reassuring to hear someone say what I've been thinking or put into words what I've been feeling and I can't put into words. And so there's that connection. But yeah, sometimes it's still hard for me to do this, to be here, and to what am I going to say? What am I going to do? How am I going to come across? I have to be careful. I don't like put my foot in my mouth or say something I shouldn't say. And sometimes I have a tendency to say stupid stuff, and I'm like, oh, dummy, I shouldn't have said that. But you learn and you grow from it, and it's challenging for sure. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. But I don't really have anxiety over talking about things openly or anything. Some people get some serious anxiety about talking in public. And sometimes there's a little bit of stress. And it's more to do with being embarrassed, I think, of, am I going to say something dumb? Am I going to look stupid? Am I going to make a fool of myself? And I just kind of have to let that go and not worry about it too much. I mean, the subject we're talking about here alone makes me look weird. So I just have to embrace that. Like, all the things that I cover on my channels are things a lot of people don't talk about, wouldn't dare talk about. But they have to be said. They have to be shown. So, Adam, you made it. Yay. So thank you for being a great role model for us that struggle. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's just something that I feel I needed to do. So I don't know if it's something that helps you. That's wonderful. It's not really why I do it, but I do it because I feel I'm compelled to. Like, yes, I know. Be the fool. Be the fool. So, how was work, Adam? Oh, God. So, yeah, like I'm sitting here right now and I'm like, okay. Normally I come here and there's a lot of comments. There's a lot of comments, a lot of questions, and I can't even keep up. Today is a little slow. So it's a little bit of pressure on me to come up with stuff to talk about. And so I'm like, okay, trying to keep in check the feeling of, people aren't going to be interested, and I can't think about that. Otherwise, it's just going to collapse. It's just going to fall apart. Ixie, come on. Yeah. Conscious about my voice, I suppose. My ADHD comes in my way. Brain glitches. Sorry, audio delays here. Yeah, I totally understand that. Yep. I mean, I'm conscious about my voice too. And I don't really, when I first heard my voice years ago, I hated it like everybody does because it doesn't sound the same as it does in your head when you're talking. But also, like, I mean, there are times where I record things and I'm like, it doesn't sound the same. And I didn't like, especially years ago when I was recording things and I was like really passionate about what I was talking about, and the way that it would come out, I'm like, oh, why does it sound like that? I don't have that in here. So why does it come out like that? And so I have been consciously like aware of how the transition from in here to out there. And so my intention has to match the delivery, because I don't want you to receive it the way that in a way that it wasn't intended. So I've been working on making my videos a little bit less passionate, I guess. It's sort of, I know it's like there was some times where my voice would be, I was speaking from here, and so it was coming out kind of raspy and aggressive, and I'm like, but that's not how I want it to come across. So yeah, I've been working on that. That's something that I've been paying attention to. Rainbow Warrior, I can listen to your videos for hours. Oh, thank you. It's very sweet. That's great to hear. Rainbow Warrior loves my voice. That's nice too. A lot of people have said that they love my voice, which is nice, because a lot of, it's difficult to convey a message if nobody wants to listen to your voice, and it's not for everybody. Some people have very nice speaking voices and some people don't. And so if your voice is off-putting, you're not going to be able to get your message across. So, and sometimes there's been a few times where I've not listened to people because of their voice. Like it's just like nails on a chalkboard to me. But there are other people I will listen to despite how they speak, because their message is so powerful. So anyway, this is all like stuff that you think of when you go through like this process of putting yourself out there. And anyhow, yeah, it's still, you have insecurities about it, and you have self-consciousness about it, and awareness about it. And but you can't let it stop you. You just have to do certain things and grow from it and change as you can. So but yeah, like I can totally understand that. And also, like I was saying, your brain can get in the way, can prevent you from you end up second guessing yourself or judging yourself, and that prevents you from moving forward. It prevents you from saying what you need to say. You start getting doubtful or getting down on yourself, and you kind of have to set that aside and just flow, just let it go. So when I'm talking to you, I put my focus on you, and that helps alleviate the stress off of me. So thank you for being here. Where are we? You're driving, but thoughts on amygdala. Oh, okay. Yeah, we've been talking about amygdala in the Discord group, so it's been interesting. I'm learning more about the Kundalini process, learning more about the glands. I'm learning more about the body and the gods, and like I don't know everything about all of that. So as I go, I learn and I evolve and add, because there's so much to know, and doing that while making videos is quite a bit of work. But the videos kind of, the decoding and everything kind of dictates what to focus on anyway. So all of that's very helpful. Eternal Padawan, you're here. Just getting in, going to lurk more than chat as I am a little busy. Good to see you. Well, I'm glad you're here. Sorry, my phone was on. I've been a bear all day, so okay. I think you have a great voice and express yourself very well, Noel and Owen. Thank you. That's very kind of you to say. Adam, when I listen to you, it's the same feeling as watching Don't Worry, Darling. Oh, that's like the highest compliment. Thank you. Speaking about synchronicities, Laurie, nice to see you here. Oh, we got some new people. Yay. Speaking of synchronicities, I saw a series in which the protagonist went to the dentist because of a horrible toothache. Days later, the same thing happened to me. Oh, wow. Okay. That's interesting. So we were talking, that kind of thing happened to Adam in a way. He was having a dream and then about a person and then saw that person the next day. And so this is sort of ringing a bell for me. Okay. So yeah, I'm going to be talking about that in the Don't Worry Darling videos, but sorry, my cat's making noise, but she's at least got something to pay attention to. This idea of foreshadowing and something happening to somebody else before it happens to you. Yeah, I'm going to be talking about that in the Don't Worry Darling video. The other thing, I saw this movie the other day that was, sorry, 3,000 Years of Longing, which was interesting, but it was kind of a boring film. It had so much potential. But anyway, main character in that, while I was watching it made me laugh because she was the first line out of her mouth had to do with her writing or trying to get to the heart of all the stories of Pinkstone. Hi, it's been a while. Good to see you. I will put myself out there and ask a question to you and others thinking about gods and the concept you have mentioned before that we are aligned with a particular god. Okay. What do you think is the benefit of knowing which god you are? It feels grandiose to contemplate. Is it simply understanding why you feel aligned to particular vocations? No, it is in understanding which god you are, you understand your life story more. And so I mentioned this in one of the previous chats. The mythology of every god this is why I show it through the movie decodes. It's very hard for me to explain because I don't really have the words right now. But how do I explain this? So each god is represented by person. Oh my God, I don't even have the words. So let me talk about my experience. It's probably better. I figured out which god I am, and in doing so, I can see how the mythology has been replayed in my life. And I can see why certain events had to happen, why certain people came into my life when they did. I can see certain patterns in my life. I can see why I live where I live, why I was born where I was born, why I am named what I am named, the vocation that I have, what path I was on. I can see how my personality, how I relate to other people, what people are around me and are interacting with me and why they are there. Um, who my parents are, who my sister is, and all of that helps to understand me better, but it also helps to understand me and the universe better, which is exactly like if you look at any of the movies I've decoded, say Don't Worry Darling, for example, and you are, let's say, Margaret, if that's your archetype, then you can put yourself in her shoes and look around you in the world of Don't Worry Darling, and you can see somebody who's like Bunny or somebody who's like Alice or Frank or your husband in that movie, and see that reflected in your own life. So it only helps to get to know you better, the universe better, the story better, and understand your role in it and why you're here, which is the whole point of the truth anyway. So it's incredibly empowering. It's also simplifies your life. It also helps you to remember your past lives, because when you are able to connect to that story, you start to see your history. You start to see how your life was played out in different ways in the past. And you understand other people in your life better. So anyway, that's what I've gotten out of it. So if anyhow, I hope that helped. Wilfie, you're a natural communicator, Yolanda. It's like information flows so concisely through you. My daughter is the same, me not so much. Well, Gemini, I was born to communicate. I'm not pure Gemini, so I still have some issues, but that's part of it. James Brockhurst, you made it. I was concerned you wouldn't make it. Hi, Yolanda, and everyone living in paradise in Portugal. Well, I'm glad to hear that Portugal's paradise. How are things going over there? Larry, he fell in love with his dentist. Oh, that's interesting. Can we, Valentina Love, can we change our life story, or do we have to keep living as God's script? You can. Okay, so this is from the information that I know so far, and it's subject to change because I don't know everything. But so far, what I understand is you are on your script until you fully wake up and remember who you are. And at that point, you are able to change your script if you want to. But until then, you are running the script of the God that you are. And you are playing your part here in this grand tarot play. So until you remember who you are, you're on that script. When you remember who you are, you have the opportunity to go off script, but you may not want to, depending on what your script is. So that's for you to decide. Can we choose another God's script, change roles? That I don't know. Possibly, if you can go off script, you should be able to choose another one. Not really sure if you'd want to. Trixie, good to see you. Almost caught up live. Have several syncs with a fan in various forms. I also had some syncs with that Nashville shooting, but I haven't read the details about it. Okay, I definitely see foreshadowing for my life possibilities through others around me. Trixie has done. She's figured out what God she is, and we've been talking about it. And maybe she wants to share some insights as to how it has benefited her. And basically, from what we've discussed, she's similarly been affected as I have. So, all good here. Planting fruit bushes, augmenting the fruit forest. That sounds nice. I like fruit. Quirky chick. Wow. I'm guessing that wow is referring to what I was talking about the gods and such. And thank you. Okay. I hope that answered your questions. I haven't seen the movie. Is Bunny like Aphrodite? I don't want to answer that question yet. I answered it in the Discord, but I don't want to answer it because I don't want to spoil it for my video. But yeah, I don't, because it's going to end. I'm going to end up getting into all of that. But yeah, I don't want to get into all of that here. But yeah, the short answer is I have a different opinion of what Bunny is. Yes, did not know that. So yeah, like it's difficult because I appreciate you asking the questions, Path Pinkstone, because I want to understand if there are blocks to getting the information that I am providing, to understand what you need to be able to grasp it. Like if there's some piece of information I can hand over to help bridge the gap, I would love to be able to do that. Now, within reason, of course, there's certain gaps I can't bridge, and there's certain gaps that are just too long to bridge. But if there is something that I can provide to help any gaps in understanding of what I'm presenting, such as why is it important that we know this, then I'm happy to do so if I can, because I feel like there are quite a few people who see it, and there are quite a few people who either don't see it or are confused, but don't ask questions and don't say anything. And I can't do anything to help anybody who isn't quite grasping it if they don't say anything. Of course, there's the odd person who will say something, but in a very hostile way, and that's not helpful. But if you have a question or want to understand something better, I'm happy to try to bridge that gap if I can. So thank you for asking, Path of Pinkstone. It helps me understand others around me, perspectives, and where their drive and motivations come from. Trixie. So it's like I was saying, when you know what God you are and you know your story, then you can understand why certain people are in your life and what they're there to serve for you. And you also get to know your purpose. And it's just like everything just makes so much more sense. And you don't feel... Okay, so the way I see it as well, and perhaps Trixie, you can talk about it. First of all, okay, quirky chick, what gods, Greek gods, all the gods are connected. All the gods are the same. They're just evolved from different periods of time. So the Anunnaki gods are the same as the Greek gods and the Egyptian gods and the Roman gods and the Hindu gods and like all Mexican gods, Aztec gods. They're all the same gods. They have different names, but they're all the same. And if you read the stories of the gods and you are able to connect them, so let's say you take the story of Thor and you connect his story to all the other gods that resonate on Thor, you will find they have a common story, but each story from each pantheon helps provide a greater, more nuanced perception or nuanced story of this god's life. So that God is also represented in the central vortex of this torus field that we live in and within you as part of your body. So it's in the brain, it's in the body. And so you can understand yourself by understanding which God you are, because there's stories already written as your stories already written, and they've been living for all of time. So, and then when you also layer that on top of the Kundalini awakening, and you layer that on top of the Taurus story language, and you understand how it fits in the macrocosm, microcosm of this universe, this story, it helps you to understand your body better, your brain better, the alchemical process better, and helps you to understand the universe better. And because it's all one, it's all the same thing. So that's where I started, was basically I started with Johnny Depp's story. And you can see that story played out in the movies, and the movies will play it back to you and show you your life to you. So you will see literally your story played out in front of you on screen. And as I've said, it's possibly not as literal as you might like, but there are some movies that I have looked at and even decoded where I've seen myself, and that story is almost identical to what has happened in my own life. So these, just basically, you want to be able to get to know yourself better. You want to be able to understand the world better. And in doing so, all of this unites everything. It's all one, it's just all one story. Okay, Eternal Padawan, very interesting tonight. My initial thoughts are that I'm low-key. I don't mean to, but I do seem to bring mischief. I also can blend into most situations, transform, and a few other things line up. That's cool. And you make a good point, because when you find, okay, say you look at Loki, and in a lot of presentations of Loki, especially in like the Marvel presentation, there's some stuff about Loki that's not all that positive, but there's stuff about all the gods that's not that positive. And like you make a good point, Eternal Padawan, and they saying, I don't mean to, but I tend to bring mischief. And that's a good thing that you are aware of this. And the fact that you say you don't mean to, and yet you do, and you're aware of it, shows that you are aware of things that you do by default because of the nature of who you really are. So those are things that just happen automatically, that you feel that you don't even have control over. So there's, we all have things that we do that are like, well, why did I do that? I don't understand why I would say that, or why I would do that. Why would I behave like that? Why am I doing this? Why am I working here? Why am I dating this person? There's all things that we would reflect on and not be sure why we're doing these things. And yet, when you know that it's because you are Loki, it makes so much more sense. And you can kind of sit back and accept it a little bit more and say, okay, this makes sense now. It's coming from the essence of who I really am. And these things are playing out in my life to reflect back to me that this is who I am. So that's really all it is just playing it back to you to say, this is who you are. This is your life story. And this is the God you are. So anyhow, I think that's something that happened to me, where I was looking at some of the things in my life where I was like, okay, well, what about this? And realized that, okay, I was feeling kind of negative about that, but now I understand where it's coming from. I don't feel negative about it anymore. I'm like, okay, it was necessary. It's in my story. There was no way I was going to be able to prevent that from happening. Absolutely no way. So it's kind of a relief in a sense. Different cultures, same stories of the same story creation. Yes, exactly. It was scripted that way. Yes. Funny you mentioned Thor just after I called myself Loki. Yeah. Do you have recommended resources? In terms of Adam, in terms of pretty much anything. The reason I use movies because they're accessible, they're relatable, and they're visual mediums. So they're as close to life as you can get. So I am able to show you visually how these people manifest things around them. So, for example, like Johnny Depp manifests fish around him, or he manifests cubes around him, or ships. And those are things that just appear by the nature of who he is, by the story that he is here to tell. So the visual medium of using movies or TV shows or what have you is a very accessible way for me to present this information to you. You can find pretty much anything you need to know in the movies, and you can look at spiritual texts, you can look at mythology, you can look at from an overall simplistic perspective, what I would suggest is read the mythologies and read over multiple pantheons, cross-reference them, and get a sense for at least the main gods. And then, if you think that you're a different god, then have a look at that story. And also your movies that resonate with you. Look at patterns in the movies. Somebody said the quirky chick said Bridget Jones resonates with her. So I'm assuming she means Bridget Jones, the character, which is based off of Pride and Prejudice. So the character Elizabeth in Pride and Prejudice is essentially close to Bridget Jones. However, Bridget is a little bit more human and modern and flawed, shall we say. She's got a little bit more quirky personality. And so that story is a myth. And so if you can compare the myths to the story, you can start to put the pieces together and figure out who you are. In many stories, there is a mother who loses her son, daughter. It's a recurring archetype. Yeah, there is. The patterns connect from astrology to human anatomy to human development to the tarot, etc. Exactly. So the stories, if this is why I say like everything maps onto everything else. This is how you know that it's true, because anything else is just superficial. But everything, because everything is connected, you want to look for the connections. You want to look for how they're connected to everything else. So this is why it's important that you understand the true nature of our physical reality is such that it is this world, this flat plane torus field that we live in. If you can understand creation, then you will see that in the myths. And that to me was the biggest connector, was understanding the torus field. And when you read the mythology and put it into creation, into the torus field and the vortex, that will help make connections for you. It did for me anyway. And maybe it's different for you. And then you can start to see it in your own life. So honestly, you can do this from anything, because the truth is in everything. You could do it from sports. You could analyze a football game. You could analyze a baseball game and the structure of a baseball game. You could still find the truth in that if you wanted to. I think it might be harder. Stories are easier. Where am I here? I've found a lot of benefit just continuing listening to different types of myth storytelling, and then you begin to pick up the patterns. The repeating pattern to me are the important part, Trixie. Yeah, exactly. And it, the repeating patterns, and what to me it's almost like, so the feminine chaotic energy is kind of like looking at something with crossed eyes or with lack of focus, whereas the masculine is looking at something with laser focus. So you want to compare the two, you want to balance the two, but sometimes it's beneficial to sort of let your focus go a little hazy, because that will allow the pieces to come together, if that makes sense. So you will notice the patterns from across all the different pantheon of gods and be able to put them together easier if you just sort of like read them first in that sort of masculine sense and get the details, and then back off and go fuzzy and go hazy and let it sort of morph and come together on its own, if that makes sense to you. Lana, welcome. Hello. Yes, I connect to one of those mother losing daughter stories. Lana, and movies are used to program people into accepting behaviors, the whole Cinderella story. Well, the Cinderella story is the story of your inner light as well. Like it's all of these stories are there for your truth. I mean, you can look at it on one level as programming, but you want to move past the programming into seeing the esoteric hidden meaning beneath it, which is a beautiful story. And it's not at all about the superficial story of, a girl marrying her prince type of fantasy. And yet it is about marrying your prince. It's about marrying, the male and female within. Eternal Padawan, thank you for that deep dive. Oh, you're welcome. Trixie, if you connect to a character anywhere or a movie, I would work from that idea. Yeah, that's very helpful. I find movies influence people more than they realize and not predictive as many assume. You get enough people to watch and harness their energy, kind of like Bible believers. You see how many quickly revert back to what they were taught, assuming to be predictive when it's programming. Well, it depends on what level of awareness you're on. You're going to be programmed into the superficial level. However, your subconscious is going to pick up the subconscious message. And when you're ready to flip it, the subconscious becomes conscious and the superficial falls to the bottom. So all of these movies that, like Batman, all of them, Cinderella, Batman, Superman, all the superhero movies, everything that we think is programming us into behaving a certain way. The man has to be this overly aggressive defender, and the woman has to be a helpless maiden and wait for her man, and her man is supposed to protect her. On the superficial level, you can debate whether that's true or not. But on the esoteric level, it is true, because the man is the woman's protector, because the feminine is embodied in the Milky Way, which is the masculine. So the the story is true, and it's how you interpret it that controls your mind. If you interpret it on a superficial level as, well, the story of Cinderella, where you're being abused by your horrible family members, and horrible, ugly people look like this, and beautiful people get all of the wonderful things in life, or however you choose to interpret it, that a woman's role is just to clean the house and get married, or you're supposed to sit around and pine after a prince and wait for him to come rescue you. That's your interpretation of the story. The what you want to extract from these movies is the esoteric meaning, which is the truth. And this truth is in everything. So it's in the Bible, it's in every book, it's in every story, it's in every language, it's in every word, it's in every person, it's in every action, it's in everything. So this is what you want to extract from it. And this is the whole essence of everything here is this one story. And once you see that, it's inescapable. All of the other stuff is just a different form of expression of that one thing. Eternal Padawan, it spirals all the way down. What spirals all the way down? James Brockhurst, explore whichever gods resonate and find the traits in yourself. Where attention goes, energy flows. Yes, many are aware of how they feed themselves through the senses. Yeah, well, many do go to escape, but those people, we're not really concerned with those people. We're concerned with us, and we're at a level where we're not looking at the superficial anymore. We're not living in the mundane reality anymore. We're out of that mindset, and so those people who go to movies for the superficial escapism, like, that's their prerogative. They can do whatever they like. They're it's not my concern what they do, and it doesn't affect me that way. So it's not happening to me. I'm not affected by that message. And yet, the reason why the truth resonates with us is because the truth is everywhere. And so when you go to watch these movies for escapism, for fun, like James Bond 007, Tubal Cain. You go there because you want to have a little bit of a break. You want to have some fun. You want to have a bit of fantasy, play in the world of imagination and possibility, romance, fantasy, what have you, adventure, things that you think you can't do in the physical world. And it's played back to you on screen. So you get sort of vicarious experience by going to the movies. So you benefit that way. However, a lot of times people get caught up in movies because of that hit. And because the movie provides everything for you, it causes you to not exercise your own imagination. And that's where your creativity stems from. For me, when I go see a movie, it activates my imagination. A lot of people go there, it shuts it off because they don't want to think. And you can hear this with a lot of people in the mundane. They'll say, I don't want to think. I just want to come home and switch my brain off and watch some television and go to bed. So they go through their whole lives not thinking. They go to work and do as they're told. They come home, switch off their brain, and then they go to sleep. So they're unconscious all day long. However, the messages in these movies is being planted in their psyche, in their consciousness, buried subconsciously. So at some point, if they are triggered into awakening like we were, maybe most of them won't be because they're probably NPCs, but let's just say when we were triggered into our awakening, a lot of times I say to myself, I don't know how I know this stuff, but I know it. And it's there. It's so obvious. It's so clear. It just comes. And the reason it comes is because it's always been there. It's just been buried. It's been hidden and suppressed. And a lot of it has been reflected in these movies because the movies reflect back to us our consciousness. So what we're seeing on the surface, it still hides the truth underneath because that's the way this world is. The layers in the movies, the layers of truth and the layers of deception are the layers of truth and deception in reality. And so now the movies are becoming a little more obvious, like Don't Worry, Darling and Westworld. The truth is rising to the surface. So it's more obvious. It's less hidden. But I don't know, maybe it's just because we can see it. So, you show it to somebody who's half asleep and you say, well, what do you think of Westworld? And he's like, oh, it was really cool. I really liked the idea of robots and stuff. So I thought it was really good show. Okay, well, if you ask them, it's like, well, what do you think in terms of comparing it to the Anunnaki creation story? No way. They will not entertain the idea. It's sheer lunacy. It's no way. So if you talk to somebody who is a little bit more aware of the Anunnaki story and sees Westworld, you will see the comparison. And then the more you know about all of the other gods and the creation stories, you'll be able to see the comparison across the board. So Eternal Padawan, sorry, I was paraphrasing the old quote. It's turtles all the way down. You mentioned the Taurus and the vortexes. Yeah. I can't say I'm familiar with that quote. But thank you for explaining. Adam, finally home. It's so deep, even to the actors that play the characters in the story, about the story. Like you said yesterday, we are all telling the story in the play of the Zodiac, the Russian doll style. Yes, exactly. Yes, and the layers of truth and lies within us are revealed around us or when we're ready to confront them within. Exactly. Yes, Lana, thank you. Adam, back to the amygdala. Adam, they are revealed outside of us when we're ready to see it. Yes, exactly. So, anyhow, did that help? Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that archetype could be found in Don't Worry, Darling. Are we talking about the mother losing the child? Yeah, Margaret. Margaret lost her child. How can you come to Flat Earth and not know that quote? I don't know. I don't know. I've never heard it. It's turtles all the way down. I've never heard it before. What's it from? Back to the amygdala comment of the day. Do I play instruments? I do, just not at the moment. I don't have time at the moment. I guess I could make time, but my problem is that when I start to play, I played for a very long time and I put it away. So yeah, I just don't play right now. But anyway, I do. I play a little guitar. I'm not very good. I used to play piano. I'm not very good. And I used to play clarinet. That was in high school and elementary school. So yes, I play those three instruments. But if somebody asked me to play clarinet, I probably wouldn't be able to play it today. But I do think, and I also used to be in choirs and stuff, and I took singing lessons and stuff. So I like singing, but so I think knowing music has definitely helped. Understanding music as a language has helped in understanding this world. Does D have turtles in his shorts again? Huh? What? JD Leslie Harmonica. Well, it's good to see you, JD. Haven't seen you in a while. Let's call her Amy and thank her for showing us the way, like many have helped Christ. Let's call the amygdala Amy. Well, we can call her Amy, or we can call her Mary Magdalene, we can call her Margaret, we can call her whatever we want to. Eternal Padawan, an old lady was asked what's under the turtle. Then if the earth's flat, her answer was it's turtles all the way down. Okay. That's cute. Well, I'm glad you know each other, D and Eternal Padawan. I was concerned. I was like, are we gonna have a fight here? Like, Adam. My comment back to the amygdala was in reference to what Lana said. Yes, that helped live. I've got homework to do. What are you talking about? That helped. What? Who are you? I feel like I'm missing something here. So yeah, anyhow, yeah, so the reason we know all of this stuff is because it's always there. It was always hidden underneath. So once you see it, you can see it quite clearly. My amygdala is telling me I can catch flies with my tongue. Okay. It's good to have a hobby. Okay, good. Well, that's good stuff. Yeah. Anyway, does anybody else have any more questions about? Sometimes D says inappropriate things. That's his mischief side coming out, isn't it? Okay. Thank you, Adam. So, a failed comedian in a past life. Okay. So anyway, does anybody have any other questions? So today I was watching a video that was about movies, and this channel is really good at philosophizing from cinema. And he was talking about the male hero and his purpose that's portrayed on film. It was very interesting because I like to understand the normie's perspective on certain things to sort of get a gauge of where they're at versus where we're at, and how they see things, because sometimes I'm spending so much time focusing on, well, where I'm at in the world and how I see it, and decoding movies like Don't Worry, Darling, because I prefer to be there, first of all. But I spend so much time there that it feels as if, and a lot of you too are aware of a lot of what I'm aware of. I feel like, well, am I sort of preaching to the choir? Does everybody know what I know? And I'm not really sensing the gap. I'm not sensing how normies perceive the information that I'm putting out. I don't even know if normies would even watch some of the stuff I put out. But anyhow, yeah, so sometimes it's very interesting to get a read on where the normies are. I don't like calling them normies, but it's, I guess, the acceptable term. Anyhow, he was talking about the portrayal of men in cinema, mostly from the heroic perspective, like James Bond and Superman and Batman, and how they go about living their lives that in such a almost grandiose way, where they put aside their physical needs and their physical responsibilities. And a lot of these people are extremely wealthy, like Iron Man and Batman. And so when they come into their purpose, they leave behind their attachment to the physical. And a lot of them didn't have an attachment to the physical in the first place, especially superheroes. So, he was having issue with that because of his attachment to the physical and not understanding that the physical is an illusion. So your obligation is to your purpose, which is ascension ultimately. So when you are, I guess, fighting the good fight of your purpose as a superhero, as a god, which is basically what these films are showing you, is that you are the god, you are the superhero, and this is how life is supposed to be lived. But the mundane everyday is holding you back. And this essentially what he was saying was, yeah, but I have the mundane every day to take care of. I have bills to pay and a family to take care of and responsibilities. So I can't just indulge in my selfish purpose and take off on this noble trek and try to save the world. and and I was like, oh yes, you can. So there's a way to go about it, of course. You can still have, you know, the physical life. You still have to have a physical life. You can't just escape it. It's still here. But detach from it, yes. And he was showing how, because these people were billionaires like Bruce Wayne and Iron Man, they didn't have a sense of value attached to anything. They didn't really value anything. They spend money on fancy contraptions and fancy cars that they need to fight the good fight, and they will quickly just dispose of it because, well, it's all in the name of the purpose. So let's just leave that. We just move on to getting another one and not worry about it. Because, you know, imagine if you're watching Batman. Let's just say for a second that Batman is real, which it is in a sense. But you're watching Batman and he's in the middle of a fight with Joker and he trashes his car and he's attached to his car, like psychologically and emotionally attached to his car. How would that play out? He would be distraught, angry, probably redirect his anger to the person who damaged his car and lose focus from his purpose, which is to go after Joker. And so he'd be sitting there mourning the loss of his car and not be able to move on emotionally or psychologically and physically because he's still sitting there clinging to his car. You can't do it. So the whole point is that you're supposed to be detached from the physical because it can't hold you back in your ascension process. That's the whole point. Rainbow Warrior, to be politically correct, I say NPCs. Yeah, okay. Normies, NPCs, heads would spin exorcist style if they heard you, Yolanda. Too much info for a mind so programmed. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, you're probably right. Blue Pillars works too. Yeah, you're probably right, Adam. If we spoke to normies about what we discuss here, they'd assume we're mentally ill. So yeah, if you were going to go around and saying that I'm the personification of the amygdala, how would people wouldn't wouldn't understand that? I guess the mischief I unintentionally unleashed you on tonight is O'Shea. How do you pronounce that? O'Shea. Yeah, well, I'm going to let you banter between yourselves. As long as it's tasteful, it's fine. It's all in good fun. So, yeah, talking about this stuff to normies is tough. You can't. Which is why I'm so grateful I have you to talk to, because it would be a very lonely existence indeed if we had no one to talk to about this stuff. So yeah, there was Arch Eye. Okay. But if it feels the goal for those in the physical seems so aimless. Can you elaborate, Adam? The goal for those in the physical seems so aimless. Do you mean like making money and having a family and okay. Okay. I went to my pharmacist and asked him if I could go back to the blue pill. He said no and gave me another month of reds. Their goals and aims and destination. I don't get the end goal. Well, the end goal of the NPC is to accumulate the most stuff, to make the most amount of money that you possibly can for your capability, possibly have, apparently for the men, it's to have as many partners as you possibly can. For the women, it's to get married. I think it's still like that. And have some kids, have some grandkids. Make sure that your kids have kids. Even though they're an independent person, you're supposed to make sure that they have kids. Have a fancy car, have a fancy house. When you already have all of that, buy another house. And travel a lot. And watch a lot of sports and TV and news, and stay up on the current events. And I think that's about it. It's mostly about accomplishments and achievements in terms of career and family. Yeah, and then it all goes away. So it's kind of weird. It always struck me as weird. Like, why are we here to do that? And it also didn't make sense to me that there was a time before I was born that I wasn't here, and now I am here, and my only task while I am here is to do these physical things, and then I die, and all of the stuff that I did isn't there anymore. For me, it might be there when I leave, but what does it matter to me if there was a world here before I got here, and then there's going to be a world here after I'm gone? So what does it matter? It just doesn't make any sense why this was supposed to be the purpose of being here. And it was so unfulfilling. It was just so frustrating. It was unfulfilling, frustrating. It was hard. It was a hard road. It was constantly trying to impress somebody, to beg them for a job, or to believe in you, to hire you, to in a sense, you're trying to impress people. Not like, in some cases, some people are lying or dressing themselves up to appear to be better than they are, so they can get a job they're not really qualified for, or a job that they really want. And then they get the job, and I'm like, well, what was I so concerned about? There's nothing to this job. Why isn't there more to this job? Why isn't it more fulfilling? Maybe if I put in more hours, maybe if I work for that promotion, and this constant one-upmanship or chasing the carrot, trying to get more out of life, and there's never any more on that other side. You think that this is going to satisfy you, and it's this constant chasing the carrot that isn't fulfilling, doesn't satisfy, and it's hard. It's like constantly fighting against people, constantly trying to convince them that you're right for something, or that you're a suitable partner, or there's nothing that just sort of, like, why isn't it easy? Why is it always wrought with conflict? Why are there always these obstacles? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. And same with education. It's like, okay, we're going to school and they're giving us things to color all the time. Here, color this map. Here, color this title page. And they give us games, and like, when you're trying to make learning fun, it's like, well, maybe if the actual thing you were teaching me was interesting, it would be fun. You wouldn't have to make learning fun. So when you learn the truth, it's so much fun. I mean, it's inherently fun. You're putting pieces together, you're solving things, you're solving puzzles, you're playing games, your mind is going. Like when you're learning in school, it's mind numbing. When you're learning the truth, it frees you, it fuels you, it lights you up inside. It's like, holy crap, what have I just discovered? It's like digging for gold. It's so exhilarating, and it's an adventure, and it's like, well, what am I going to come across next? And it's so thrilling, and it's a total joyride. Okay, so it's more like a roller coaster. There's some really good highs, and then there's some like really bad lows, but it is exhilarating. And maybe we probably wouldn't have that experience if we didn't have to dig for it ourselves, sure. But I still think that this knowledge would still be exhilarating to learn, even if you didn't have to dig for it. So, like a whole mundane reality life made no sense. And I'm sure it made no sense to all of you as well. Adam agreed, eternally grateful for our discussions. Me too. Thank you. Adam, their goal and aims. Oh yeah, we talked about that. Eternal Padawan. Who needs the physical when you have the mystical? Line from a song I wrote. That's beautiful and very true. Do they even contemplate why? No, they don't. So there was one time I was looking for a place to live in Oxford, and I lived in Oxford for 5 or 6 months. And so I wanted to know what my roommates did in their free time. And there was one place I went to, and I asked, I said, well, what do you do in your free time? I got blank stares back, and they looked at me like I asked them like the hardest question on earth. And they're like, what do you mean? Well, what do you like to do in your free time? Well, you mean watch the telly or go down the pub? I'm like, no, I mean hobbies or interests or anything. And like, what's that for? And I was like, okay, I don't think we're a good fit here. How do you not have any interests or hobbies outside of work? And like I was saying before, I just like to go to work, shut off my brain, do as I'm told, come home, shut off my brain, watch TV, and go to bed. And it's constantly for the NPC about seeking pleasure, temporary pleasure, short-term pleasure. It's like, okay, I live for the weekend. I do my job and just do as I'm told. I don't have any conflicts. I don't think about what I do. I don't seek out any information. I'm out of school, so why would I bother learning anything? And they just live for the weekend. And so when the weekend comes, they get drunk. They go out to restaurants. They pleasure seek. They go skiing. They go skating. They go traveling. They go bungee jumping, whatever like external thrill or activity can fill their day. Nothing wrong with any of these things. I'm just saying that this is all they do. And it's constant activity. There's no time for self-reflection. What's the point? There's nothing to reflect on. And obviously this is a broad generalization, but there's no reason to reflect. Like they live hand to mouth, they paycheck to paycheck. Nothing's ever enough for them. They never save anything, so they never have anything. And so they're constantly just living day to day, not worrying about anything or thinking about anything. All they worry about is, do I have enough money to cover my bills and buy the beer and cigarettes that I want? And if so, I'm good. What do you think about having children? This is a very interesting question. Especially interesting. Not long ago, I was watching a video by Devin Maggi saying that he thinks that children are something that you don't need to do or shouldn't do. And it's a kind of a controversial subject. So I personally do not have children, and I'm not that, I've had my moments, but I don't really regret it, simply because I personally know that I'm here for the truth, and I couldn't do what I do if I had children. Mind you, if I had them in my 20s, I probably would be able to, in a sense, because they'd be grown up and probably moved out by now. However, the skills and the experience and the knowledge that I've accumulated over my lifetime of adventures have all amounted to me being able to do what I do now. So, yeah, so that, for me personally, I think that there's, I mean, obviously, I don't think that there's anything wrong with having children. I just think that it is something that ties you to this physical place more and makes it difficult for you to be self-focused, which you need to be in order to go through the ascension process and learn the truth, because your attention is more divided amongst you and your family. So yeah, I don't personally think there's anything wrong with it. I think that it's just more difficult to go through the ascension process when you have that attachment. And children, I guess they can be wonderful blessing, and learning from your children as well as from your parents. You can learn from, because they're a reflection of you. So you can learn quite a bit from your children, just like you can learn quite a bit from your parents. So having kids more of a selfish act, I don't know. I don't think I said that. So, but anyway, in a lot of ways, yes, having children is a selfish act. Because if you think about it, most people who want to have children are thinking about themselves. They aren't thinking about the child that they're bringing into the world. They aren't thinking about how they bring that child into the world. They aren't thinking about, well, how are they going to raise a child? How are they going, in a specific sense? Some people do. How are they going to educate the child? How are they going to look after them, raise them, nurture them, prepare them for the world? And most people just sort of, either by accident, bring a child into the world, or they purposefully try to have a child. But a lot of times it's more about them having the need to fulfill something in them to bring a child into the world. And so you can say that it is kind of a selfish thing in a lot of ways. And then there's the argument of, well, why would I bring a child into this world when it's so horrible? It depends on your perspective. A lot of people don't think the world is horrible. Some people do. Some people see it as something beautiful. And then there's the you're bringing a child in to further perpetuate this physical reality. So there's that aspect as well. But I'm kind of neutral on the subject. It's It's your choice. If you want to bring a child into the world, who's anyone to say whether you should or shouldn't? You just have to understand how it's going to impact your life and how it's going to impact the lives of those around you. And I don't think a lot of people consider that. I don't think a lot of people, they just fall into it because of society says you're supposed to get married and have children. And, some people shouldn't have children. Some people are terrible parents. Some people are neglectful. Some people are hateful, evil, violent. They shouldn't have children. And yet they carelessly do. And there's not a lot of planning or thought that goes into it, and there's not a lot of love that goes into it. And a lot of times parents have children to fill a gap within them, which is a lack of love. So they want to get the love that they're not getting from anywhere else from their children, which is really selfish. Like, that's the ultimate in selfish. So, I don't think anybody really asks themselves why they want children or thinks it through or puts love into it. I mean, children should be born out of making love. And nowadays there's a lot of emphasis, especially on screen. There's a lot of emphasis on people with having issues. So they have to schedule an appointment, and they make it very perfunctory, and so there's no love in it at all, and it's just like a functional thing. And it becomes more about we got to get a baby, so we have to do these things, and there's no love in it for the children's sake, and there's no love in it through the relationship that you have with your partner. There's nothing there. And the ultimate lack of love is if you get a baby through artificial insemination from a donor. You don't even know the person. So there's zero love in that. It's very chemical or very medical, procedural. But anyhow, that's just my perspective. You're entitled to your own perspective. It's all external validation. Where you go beyond the physical and boom, you're eternally validated. I think sometimes it's tied to natural urge of producing and satisfaction of creating something they can visualize. That too, Trixie, that's an excellent point. And I think that's kind of linked to why you can swap out the need to have children by having a legacy or a business, or you get that fulfilled elsewhere through through leaving some kind of legacy behind in a business or something like that. So sometimes personally, like, I don't do this for a legacy or anything. I do this because I know it's the right thing to do, and I have to do it. And I think a lot of people will probably benefit from it in several years from now or something. But I don't really care. Like, when I leave, I'm gone. Like, what do I care about what people think of me when I'm gone? I'm gone. It's not important to me to really leave something of myself behind. I kind of would rather not, in a sense. But I mean, that's just, you're only, other people remember you, I think, is more important. They remember you for who you are, for how you treated them, and what you left them with. And to me, that's my legacy, is to try to connect with people and leave them with a memory or a thought that they reflect on, that help them improve their life, help them see something, help them make a change that bettered their life. That to me is more valuable and more important and more rewarding. and then a lot of that I don't even hear of, because a lot of times you'll say something to somebody and they might not want to hear it, and then years later they might reflect on it and you'll never hear about it. You'll never get a thank you. And then there's been times where I've said something to somebody and they turn around and said, or I didn't say anything even. And they turn around and said, you know what, you doing what you do inspired me to do what I'm going to do now. And that's huge. That's so important. That's so meaningful to me. So, so that's an excellent point, Trixie. When you realize you're in soul school, learning becomes so much fun. Yes, that does. It's like they're ghosts, shells. From an NBC point of view, my life would seem incredibly mundane. The irony. Yeah, I know. Knew that's funny. Yeah, it's true. Like my life is very small now. I used to have a fairly big life, travel and all this sort of stuff. And now I just sort of prefer to stay home. Youth is the time for the physical things like having kids. I'm glad I had mine when I was young. I'm 45 now and even have 2 grandkids. I find life without kids way more selfish than with them. But what's wrong with being selfish? I mean, there's 2 sides to selfishness. There's selfish in the sense that it's self-care and self-preservation, or which can be kind of protective, but self-care and looking out for yourself and looking after yourself and being mindful of the things that you do. And then there's selfish in that I'm only doing this because I want it. I don't care about the consequences, which is a negative. So I would think, yes, that there's a lot of fulfillment that comes from having children. But I also think that there's a lot of fulfillment that comes from not having them. So I don't like either way. My parents should never have had me, yet I feel I chose them. Well, they should have had you because you're here. So, but yeah, like the trauma helps develop us. So Valentina, thanks to Yolanda. I agree. Love must be the center for conception of the baby, for sure. It's, I mean, but the problem is that we live in the trauma center. So we have babies born out of, horrible situations and unpleasant encounters that should never happen. But, but yeah, I think that ideally that's how they ought to be conceived. And I think too, when you are raising a child, you ought to be selfless in a sense, but you also have to look after yourself. You can't take care of children if you're not looking after yourself. So you have to be able to balance the two. There's parents who lose themselves and lose their identity in their children. And then when their children are gone, they don't know who they are and they're depressed. And they're so into their children's lives that they don't have their own life. They don't have their own identity. And they're too coddling, they're too controlling, and that's not healthy. So understanding that your child is not you, and your child has a separate identity and a separate life, and they're going to make mistakes, and they're going to need your support to get through it. They're going to need your guidance to get through it, and have some healthy conversation around that, and be able to help them navigate this place, because a big part of the trauma here is the lack of navigation, the lack of preparation, the lack of communication from parent to child, and telling them this is what the world is like and here's how you navigate your way through it. So I mean, it leads to mental illness, it leads to instability, it leads to neediness, it leads to bad relationships, it leads to ultimately trauma that could have all have been avoided if your parents had taken better care of communicating how to navigate your way through the world. And granted, they can't possibly be prepared for your journey and your path. They can only prepare you from their own personal life experience, which may be limited. So you have to also accept that your parents do the best they can with what they know, and you take it from there. So it's it's tricky business. There's so many of us that need to be there for our inner child first. Oh, well said, Adam. Absolutely. You do need to look out for yourself first. David Baxendale, I said to my parents, what the hell were you thinking bringing children into this asylum so the human race doesn't become extinct? The business of life is to create more life. Yeah. But hey, like I said, you can look at this place in a variety of ways. If you're in the perspective that it's a loony bin, which it is. I mean, if everybody here needs therapy, then it's a loony bin, right? So, you wouldn't want to bring a child into this world if that's your perspective. But if you are of the perspective of this is a place where we come to learn so that we forget ourselves and remember ourselves again, go on a wild ride of being a god who becomes mortal and see what happens, and learn to rise our consciousness and have that experience. Why would you deny a child that experience? Why would you deny a soul that experience? Somebody's got to bring the souls into this world, right? So it can be a positive as well. It depends on how you look at it. Eternal Padawan, no judgment for my last comment. I never said selfish was bad. It was just the word that was being used, hence the quote marks. Yeah, I understand. I just was trying to clarify the selfish thing. So, Path of Pinkstone, raising a child can be a beautiful, unselfish thing. Likewise, having kids when it fits around careers and dumping them off at a nursery, baby onwards, pretty selfish. Yeah, there's lots of ways to look at it in terms of selfish or selfless. And I mean, the ultimate in selflessness would be losing yourself in your child, but then that's also selfish because you yourself have no identity and you're trying to morph yourself into your child, which is not healthy. So you're trying to escape into your child is basically what you're doing. This is totally unhealthy. And it's selfish because because you're trying to essentially control your child and not let them live their own life. So if you have to be balanced and you have to have enough distance to allow your child to live their own life and provide them with enough love, support, and information or preparation for this world as you can. Anyhow, that's enough about that. The personality types is tied to the archetypes. Yes, your personality comes from the archetype. And I don't really like using the word archetype simply because it has a flawed connotation or definition, because a lot of people have taken, even when they associate it with the gods, they've taken the gods and sort of boiled it down to this is sort of your personality type. If you are motherly, you are this archetype. If you are sexual, you are this archetype. No, it's not like that. It is so much more specific and more nuanced than that. And it frustrates me to hear this because it reeks of the superficial astrology bullshit that people fall for. It's like, oh, if you're an Aries, you're in your head. You're stubborn if you're a Taurus. It's like, okay, well, what's beyond that? There's so much more to astrology than just being stubborn as a Taurus. So you gotta, they just find it so hollow. And I mean, it's on purpose because it's going to distract the people from finding out the truth, that astrology is the truth. And so you get caught up in the what's your sign nonsense without understanding what the zodiac means and the significance of it. It's not helpful. So yeah, it is there as a deterrent. It is there as a clue and a deterrent to lure people in who are curious about it because there is some truth to it, but it deters people who see it as airy-fairy nonsense because they don't look deeper. And so all they will see is, oh, you're a Taurus, you're stubborn. Oh, okay. And then the compatibility thing. No, okay. So the whole this is another level of understanding. So you would understand why you have romantic attachments to certain types because your God, the God that you are, is drawn to a specific God, and you have that story to play out. And so this idea of, oh, I met an Aries and I am a Gemini. Are we compatible? It doesn't fucking matter. It isn't going to help you. It isn't going to explain anything. It isn't going to mean anything. And when you know why people come into your experience and you say, well, now I can detect that this person is the Loki archetype. This person is a trickster. This person's going to mess with me. Or maybe this person's going to be fun and playful. Is going to bring some adventure and some laughter in my life. You know what you're getting into, and you know why they're in your life, and you know why they came into your life. And you can also read the stars better in your own story, which I haven't quite gotten to yet. But that's way more helpful in understanding why someone's in your life and understanding why they were meant to be in your life and whether you're compatible or not. It's like, if you are meant to be with a Loki type, sorry, Eternal Battle, I don't mean to single you out, but I was trying to make it relatable. So it's like, if you are meant to be with a Loki type, then when you meet somebody and you have chemistry with them and you find out that they are a Loki type, then you realize, hang on, this is going to work because I'm meant to be with a Loki type and we get along really well. So this is a good thing. Okay, cool. Whereas, oh dear, this person is, let's say this person's Mars type, and that's not your type at all. You don't get along, and you know it's just going to be a battle, a fight the whole time. But there's tension there, there's attraction there, and it's like, no, I don't want this. But if you feel drawn to that person, you might have to have that experience. You might need to go through that experience in order to prepare you for your next experience, which is going to be healthier or more beneficial. So you can understand, okay, I need to go through this experience for whatever this person has to teach me. Let's go for it, you know? Pepperami, nice to see you. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, absolutely. The duality of the physical, it's a matrix, not a straight answer. Yeah, thanks, Trixie. Adam, the focus is on just your sun sign, and when there's so much making you who you are, the moon is so much more influential to who you are. Yeah, like there's so many subtleties and nuances, and I mean, the map of who you are was created the day that you were born, and so all of the position of the stars, where you are, not just when you were born, but where you were born, and the arc in the sky of your star story dictates who you are, the kind of person you are, and the life you're going to have. That's just incredibly powerful information. True Sidereal Astrology claims I was born in the sign of Gemini. Tropical claims I was born in Cancer. Yeah, I think it's a melding of the two. I think that there's truth in both. And I've talked about this before. One represents heaven, one represents earth. And so you have to marry the two. So that's why I think that knowing which God you are is way more accurate. And that will tell you a lot more about who you are and your story. Okay, any more questions? Any more comments? Anything else you wanted to discuss? I'm lucky enough to know time and location of my birth. Yeah, some people don't know, and yeah, it's not easy to find out either. You can, approximate it. And I think too that after doing the Johnny Depp analysis, I think that there's a way of figuring it out through that path that's probably more accurate, but I don't know for certain yet. I'm just hypothesizing based on that experience and trying to, just because once you know your story, you'll be able to find it in the stars. So it will, based on the position of the stars, it will dictate the time and date. David Baxendale, what does when you were conceived have to do with it? When you were conceived, I don't know. That I don't know. Did I say conceived? I thought I said born, but where you were born and the time you were born, but I don't know about conception. So somebody said the word conception is really interesting because when you're conceived in the womb, it's like your creation has just begun. Just as when you conceive of a thought, your creation has just begun. So you can see the connection between the head and the womb as both conception centers, and they have similar structure as well. Been an amazing live stream as always. Lots to think about and absorb. Thank you, Eternal Padawan. Yeah, if nobody else has any more comments or questions, I'm going to wrap this up because it's 4:30 and losing my voice as always. So far, yeah, it's been a really good chat, and I really thank you for your great questions and comments. And so yeah, like it's hard too because a lot of times people don't want to ask questions. They don't want to put they don't want to have the question associated with their name, even when their name is not their real name. I've done this. I don't really want to put those questions out there sometimes. So I can appreciate that. So thank you for hosting. Thanks, Trixie. You're welcome. Thank you, Linda and chatters. See you next time. Thank you, Yoli, and all the chat. You're welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining me. Appreciate you being here. And hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. See you next week. Make sure you like this video. Give it a thumbs up on your way out. Have a good day. Bye, everybody.